please.
All right, it is July 14th. The time is 6:34 p.m. I am Council President Brian Wolf, opening the meeting, or pardon me, the public hearing for the 2023 tax budget. In attendance, we have Councilpersons Shrestha, Bruger, Koss, and Camera. Councilperson McNamara let us know he was running late, but he'll get here when he can. And also, Fiscal Officer Jeffrey Wilczek. And I will hand the floor over to you for your presentation of the tax budget.
Thank you, Council President. In front of you is the 2023 tax budget. The sole purpose of the tax budget is to justify the continued collection of property taxes and to participate in an allocation of the local government funds that the county has to allocate. The tax budget itself, the amounts presented in here for the general fund, the operating funds, is kind of a starting point for the budget that will be done in the fall and actually appropriated late December for next year. I just want to highlight a few things running through here fairly quick. On page 1, we list out the property tax levies that are in existence and an estimate of what I believe would be the dollar amounts that would come forth on the levies. And it's based upon $48,800,000 in valuation. The Budget Commission will actually adjust those amounts based upon what they have from the tax due bid. Page 2 is general fund. Estimated revenue of $2.5 million and expenditures of 2.3, almost 2.4 million, and a fund balance at the end of 23 is estimated at 1.8 million. Salaries in here were increased based upon the 2022 budget by roughly 5%, except for the police, which is going to be higher in order to stay even with the surrounding jurisdictions. Healthcare, I bumped up 15%. We won't know what that actually is until later in the fall. My understanding is last year, coming into 2022, we had just less than 5% increase in our premiums. I don't think we'll get that lucky again, but we'll know September, October timeframe on that one. Okay? If you look at page 5, I've identified all the debt service funds that are in. 2 new ones for this year is the sewer phase 2 and phase 3 debt service funds. There are OPWC loans that relate to improvements that were done, and we start the payments in 22, and we will continue on. The dollar or the revenue to cover those comes from the surcharge on sewer, and that's allocated between the debt service fund and the operating fund at this point. Fund balance for these debt service funds will always have at least 1 year's debt service in existence in case something happens or there's a downturn in collections or the economy. We have 1 year's fund balance to fall back on to help make debt service payments. It helps ensure we do not miss a debt service payment. Water line phase 2, or I'm sorry, phase 3 and phase 4 are also still in here. EMS vehicle bond retirement, the only reason that was listed is there's $100 left in fund balance. We will be drafting legislation to transfer that money and close the fund later, if not this year, early next year. Page 7 starts into other operating funds for us, such as street, the permissive fund, and the MP TIF equivalent fund, which is actually a new one created because of the bond issue. And what I want to touch on with that fund, if you notice, there's a $215,000 advance reflected for '22. There will be some legislation forthcoming relating to that advance. When the debt service schedule was established for the new bond issue, it was an oversight when they set the first year's debt service payment being $490,000. Didn't pick up that first half property taxes were already paid over to MI, reducing what we owed them. So I only have a half year's worth of property taxes, or in this case, service payments, to make debt service payments, so I need an advance from general fund to cover our debt service payment. And that advance will be repaid back over roughly 2 years from the service payments that come in. And again, I'll be coming forward with that in the near future for that advance. The debt payment is actually due in December. I've got a little time there. Storm sewer maintenance.
So, I hate to interrupt, but I'm, instead of staying till the end, I think I'm gonna jump in, Jeffrey.
Go ahead.
So I was still a little confused about what you were saying there. So, is it that we are going to advance money to pay the property tax bill because we won't actually be getting the property tax collected in time, or what's, I'm so
No.
confused.
We'll advance money from the general fund to the debt service fund because we don't have enough in the service payments from the TIF area this year to make the debt service fund.
So, yeah, we haven't had time to collect enough TIF monies to actually pay that bill. Is that what I'm hearing?
So here, let me take a stab at it, Jen. So when we engaged in the financing, the TIF revenue financing, it is scheduled in the amortization schedule, a full payment of 400 and some odd thousand, right? We had already sent off half of the TIF revenue that we've received this year to MI, reducing our obligation to them, but we didn't fully account for that 490 whatever. So we're gonna borrow.
So the
out of
money
our-
that we need to give to the bank,
we're gonna borrow out of our general fund, and
Yes.
because there's
Okay.
approximately in excess of 150 in service payment revenue beyond the debt service payment, we'll pay ourselves back over the course of 2 years.
okay, that makes sense.
Page 9, the storm sewer maintenance fund. There's an existing balance in it, but there's no revenue yet. That is something that is going to be addressed later this fall and will require council to make some pass legislation to address a fee for storm sewer purposes. And my understanding is there's a desire to also adjust the water and sewer surcharges at the same time to try and even things out for everybody, so that it's essentially a zero increase to the residents. There will be some discussions forthcoming on that one, and then we'll be meeting with the engineer next week.
So you're talking about lowering one of the surcharges and raising the other so that the money goes where we want it
Yes.
to and not have to do like we've done before.
Yes.
Where we said we're gonna take some of this out and do it, okay.
And this is the one that's been going on for a couple of years, right? This moving the money, reallocating the funds.
Yes. The objective is to lower the water sewer surcharge in an amount equal to what will become a storm sewer charge. The only area we run into a problem, and Mike Flickinger and I will talk about this and figure something out, that won't work quite as easy with businesses because they have a much larger area that has runoff. So again, that conversation will be forthcoming with council as to how it's all gonna work.
Gotcha, and some of the reason for that is our water lines are in good shape, but our sewers are not, and that's where we need the money to fix things. And some of that I'm saying just for the recording, for people who are at home confused, like, wait, why are we doing that?
It's the storm water.
Yeah.
Storm sewer drains.
Yeah, the storm, yeah.
Yeah. Page 10, that's street maintenance fund, sewer maintenance fund, that's, the reason the revenue is lower here is because dollars are allocated to debt service for the two OPWC loans that we have. Page 11 is a listing of miscellaneous funds, and we had anticipated revenue and expenditures. These may be a one-time grant, or it may be a very small fund that gets little money, and it's not truly an operating fund. One large fund listed there, and again, this one has a limited life, is the MP TIF Construction Fund. That is the fund that received the bond proceeds. And right now, it's a rough estimate as to the payouts based upon construction schedule and stuff, which will be forthcoming too.
And that, on page 11, then, which one is the one that, there's a couple we can only use, is it state highway and fund that can only be used for something that's off of, like 3 or Cleveland Avenue, is that the one that's limited?
Well, the State Highway Improvement Fund receives a portion of gas and MVL fees,
Right, that's,
and it can only be used for expenditures for the state highway, which is part of 161.
And also,
Short distance.
and Route 3, right?
But none of Route 3 is within our boundary.
Right, it's not
I thought Minerva Lake Road was actually on that map as well.
I can't answer that one. believe
I
it's
remember
state
hearing
highway.
that too somewhere, but that could be a
I believe it is
shared,
Regulation a couple of years ago.
that could be a shared delusion, but now we have 3 people who have that same delusion.
Minerva Lake is not a state highway.
It's not a
No, no, no,
state
it's not a
highway,
state
but I
highway,
believe
but
it's,
it's- If you did something from end to end, then you might be able to use the money because it touched it.
yeah, because it's on some platted map of county something. I know it's been part of the discussion in years past, but
And,
I
you
don't
know,
actually
part
think
of-
that's necessary for this
Right.
tax
Yeah.
budget discussion
No,
at
but
the
that's
moment.
something for us to look into to see
Yeah,
just what part of 161 that I'm aware of.
we only have like an eighth of a mile of 161.
To say it's pretty short.
Yeah, we would
Um,
never,
I mean, I just don't, I was just saying that because most people, that's a big chunk of the special funds, it's 171,000.
Yes.
And it's really not usable, it's just,
Right.
It's highly
not
restricted.
to be delusional about, you think you got more money in here than you really.
we've actually talked about giving it to Columbus in the past. But why give away money? But if you can't use it, it's not doing you any good, so.
Interest.
Well, it might be good,
Actually, the fund
wouldn't it be a
receives
good
interest by
rush?
statute,
Yeah,
for state constitution actually. So,
but I'd imagine that interest goes back into that same fund, right? So it's not, you can't use the interest either. So it's just sitting there on our books, doing us no good.
if we ever have a project that involves 161 and entering into the village, we may be able to utilize those funds.
Maybe.
Page,
It's a highway, that's, never mind.
page 12 is a list of our outstanding debt obligations and the dollar amounts required for payment in '23. I do want to highlight 4 of the loans listed there, including the 2 sanitary sewer, phase 2 and 3 loans, are interest-free. Those were obtained from Ohio Public Works Commission.
Right. And this, on this TIF, the TIF bonds, is this how it will look every year as far as how it's accounted for?
Are you looking at page 11?
Page 12, where you have revenue bonds and you've got the TIF bonds and.
It will be listed
These-
there as
these-
revenue bonds,
These
yes.
numbers this will be something you report on annually, or is this annually, monthly? This will be just annually, okay.
In terms of the tax budget, it will always reflect
No,
the
yeah,
outstanding balance and what's due next year.
okay.
In the annual report for the village, you'll see a bit more information regarding that. in an amortization schedule for the future too. Okay. And the last page, page 13, is essentially a draft of what the official certificate of estimated resources will look like for us. That official certificate sets the limit on the amount of appropriations that may be adopted for each fund. This will also get adjusted slightly from the Budget Commission based upon what they calculate our property taxes at. Page 14 is a short list of some improvements projects that we have coming up or that we'll be working on. East Shore storm sewers, $240,000, and part of that is the ARP money that's coming in. I was mentioned to me also was pool facilities and shelter house. Jordan storm sewers for an estimate of $1 million, and road and street projects another $100,000. Those are always subject to change yet, and we'll talk about them more when we address the budget in the fall for next year and what is appropriate.
I thought it was really nice that you have the fund number on that page. I appreciate that.
It helps me keep things straight too. So.
Okay, I have been interrupting with questions. Some of our residents have been asking questions. I guess, any more questions?
Yeah, I do.
Go right ahead.
Okay, so just put this on page 2, quick question, since this is my opportunity to ask questions. So is the charge for services under receipts, does that include pool revenue?
Does it include what?
Pool revenue?
Yes.
Okay. Is this mostly that?
Yes.
And then just earning on investment, you're hoping for like $25,000 in 2023. Is this based on the recent legislation that was passed so that you can reinvest?
That will help, yes.
Oh, okay.
So right now it's been limited to CDs, which has been getting less than 1%. Some of the government securities that we can invest in are upwards of almost 2%.
Cool.
And the bond proceeds will be invested separately, and the interest will go to the project fund.
Okay. And then you mentioned already about the police salaries, and now on the fire and EMS other, I know that I'm aware that an unexpected contract enhancement needs to be made to include not only the service, EMS and fire service, but also the fire hydrant services and such. And is this contract solid now? Is this done yet?
I can't address that side of the contract because I'm not that familiar with it yet.
Okay.
But that is the payment that we will be making for this calendar year to close.
So 2022, and you've upped to 10% in 2023. Is that just a thing?
In talking with Leah, who was involved with some of this in the past, it's a reasonable guess. Okay.
Okay. And of course, I've read about the swimming pool salaries, having to be bumped up to get lifeguards, etc.
Yes.
So that's a significant change. It was 41, before those two items in the previous year, like 41 and 43,000. And now they're bumped up about 5%. Are you concerned at all about that? I mean, of course, the pool never makes.
It's not a money-making product.
Right,
But
and it would have been nice if it ever broke even. It came close once, I think. But, so are you concerned at all about our increasing costs for the pool?
I am some,
Is that a
but
political question?
it's a It's an asset of the village over to the residents and kids. And what it has to offer kind of helps offset some of the added costs that we don't recover from our fees.
Sure, but we weren't really expecting our, fire and EMS to go up 20, 30%. And as the previous fiscal officer was very concerned about that event happening.
That one does concern me.
Yeah.
We'll find out more come fall. That's my understanding when we'll find out what the change will be. I will tell you that, everyone, the increase that we had with just lifeguards is a concern. And as you are aware, what's going on in the economy is going to impact us too. What we have to look at just to stay even with our own police compared to the surrounding police departments is not easy to stay up with either. We're looking at, from what I'm seeing, maybe a 9-10% increase for those salaries.
Yeah, and I see about 9% at this time, so, okay. Well, okay, so let me see, I had one more thing maybe. On the, I think you did answer my question on the 2901, so I'm good on that. Okay, I think we're good.
Point out one more thing with this. Current year estimates are the existing budget. It's not actuals to date or anything, it's the existing budget that we have. And that budget is pretty tight, but I feel it's.
Yeah, no, I mean, I looked at the one from last year, so. Thank you very much.
Any additional questions?
Well, I have a question for council. Has the newer members of council seen this format or this document before?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've gone over through several meetings already.
I haven't seen any of them. Where you've gone over a budget? What meeting was that?
This has been presented to us
We
already.
reviewed it in the finance committee.
I guess
Yeah.
you had quickly gone over, I don't know that you went over the actual end budget or the fund balance, general fund balance at the end of the year.
I had mentioned it, that was it.
Yeah, and would it be safe to characterize the balance at the end of the year as the rainy day fund? Because that's been brought up before. It's like, how much money do we have in the rainy day fund?
There is no allowable rainy day fund for a municipality, period. It's not allowed at all.
I get,
Council can adopt a policy that identifies a target carryover balance for that fund and what it would be used for and how it gets replaced. And that will be a conversation for us in the fall. I can tell you that that balance of 1.8 million is slightly over half the general fund budget. GFOA, Government Finance Officers Association, recommends that carryover balance in general fund be approximately 50% of your budget.
well, I've heard that number,
That's what's recommended by National GFOA.
I get that.
There are some things that can affect that policy depending upon what your revenue sources are. And again, that's something that we'll talk about in the fall.
And the only other question I have is you keep mentioning that we're going to pass the budget, the final budget in the fall or in December. We haven't done that for the past 4 years that I was on council. The only thing that we've done, I went and looked through all the resolutions and ordinances for the last 4 years. I'm yet to see, and anybody here, show me.
I'm sure I voted on, I was very particular about that.
Yeah.
The
Passing that
appropriation
budget.
measure has been adopted in December each year.
Say that again?
The appropriation measure, which is the budget for the calendar year, gets adopted in December.
It's called an
It's the
appropriation.
appropriation ordinance. That
Yeah,
sets
because
the
in the
budget.
past, it used to be the tax budget in July, and then they call it in the past the final budget.
And again,
It's just an
tax budget
appropriation.
serves a certain
You have
purpose.
to look under for an
Well, I
appropriation.
guess the
is
reason I bring it
separate.
up, I don't ever remember having a conversation about what what the final budget was gonna be.
Yeah, no, we did,
Oh,
we did,
well.
absolutely, yeah.
All right, that's all I got.
All right, then I think with that, with 1 minute to spare, I will call this public hearing closed.